All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we are going to make the radar burst. So we're going to make a bunch of little balls go out and bounce off these guys and then come back. So the first thing we're going to need is we're going to need our control station. So I'm going to choose a sprite, and the control station is a building. So I can just type in building here and it'll find it. And I don't like that building, it's too big, but I can change the costume. So I'm not going to select that costume, I'm going to select this costume here. And then the other thing I'm going to do is there are a few issues. One is I'm going to make sure that the building is, that's interesting. I'm just going to move the building down. So I'm going to set Y to, instead of 27, I'm going to set it to 0, see what happens. Yeah, it moves it down. I'm going to keep moving it down more. Negative 20, does that work? Yep, negative 30, negative 40, I guess. Okay, I want the building nice and low. I can keep moving the building. Now, one thing that when you look at the costume, you can see that there's this dot here. This is where it thinks the center of the costume is. And actually, before I move it, I probably need to put it right over that center dot so that I center the costume there, okay? So it thinks the center of the costume is there. It's kind of confusing, but it's important for something else. So the center of the costume is right there. And then I should move it in the code here. I can drag it down like this. All right, so now my building is down nice and low where I want it. Can I move it even more? It's probably as low as it'll go. But I do want it a little bit smaller, so I'm going to change it to an 80% size building. And there's my building. Now, the other thing, the building doesn't really do anything. It's just for decorative effect, really. Well, it does do something. All right. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create the radar burst. So I'm going to go ahead and select a sprite. And I'm going to use this ball here. And I want this to be way smaller than that. So I'm going to set it to 20%. And, oops, didn't mean to drag you. And I'm going to put the ball down here. I'm going to stop everything just so I'm not confused by what's going on with those little rockets. So the ball's there, it's in the center of the building. And one thing that's really important for this project to work is that the ball has to be on top of the building. It cannot be on the building. It has to be on top of the building and not touching the building. Because the way this project works is when the balls hit the building, it does something. I'm going to make them a little bit bigger, 30% maybe. Okay, so they're still not touching the building. That's good. Move it up so it's really not. Now, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to use cloning once again, and I'm going to say control. I always do that, wrong one. Events. When the green flag is clicked, please forever do something. And what I'd like you to do is I would like you to wait 1 second and then repeat 20 times and make a clone of myself. So that is under control, make a clone of myself, create a clone of myself. All right, so far so good. Now, I am going to use a variable here because what I want is I want these guys to fly in different angles, different ways. So I'm going to create a variable, and a variable is just a place where you store data, and I'm going to make a new variable. And my new variable, it's going to be for all sprites, and I'm going to name it angle for radar. Now, when it starts, it's going to be 0, but every time I create a clone of myself, I'm going to change the angle of radar by 9. So let's go ahead and go to variables and change the angle of radar by 9. All right, so let's just see what happens here. You can see that this is going up. Oh, I need to reset it too. So I need to set it back to 0. So 20 times 9 is 180, and then I need to go back to 0. I also need to set angle of radar to 0 at the beginning. So I'll set it to 0 right here. So it'll be 0 each time. and then it'll go up by 9. So now let's see what happens. Starts at 0, goes up to 180, 0, 180, 0, 180. Okay, good. Now I want the little radar guys to start flying. So I'm going to say when I start as a clone, point in direction, angle for radar. So I'm going to now use that variable, angle for radar. So you can actually use the variables that you've created, and then control forever, let's say move 10 steps. So let's just see what happens. Okay. All right, so it's kind of doing what I want. First off, I see that the radar is shooting all to the right. So this number shouldn't be 0. It should be negative 90. Let's try. I know it's going to be some function of 90, so let's try 90. Let's see what it does there. Okay. Oh, now it's even worse. So how about 270? Oh, I have to hit stop. Perfect. Except, do you see that it's not a burst? It's more of a sweep. So what happens is that as each one of these clones is created, it starts flying right away. So how can I make them not fly until it is all ready to go? Well, let's see. I could make them not fly until it reaches 270 again. So I could say when I start as a clone, point in direction, radar angle, and then wait until angle for radar equals 270. So that's an operator. Radar for angle, or angle for radar rather. So wait until it equals 270. Angle for radar, put that here. And now let's see what happens. Ah, it bursts just like I wanted it to. The only thing that's happening though is that all the little balls are getting stuck on the edges, and eventually I'm going to be able to no longer make them because there's a limit to how many clones you can make in Scratch. So I need to make it so that if it touches edge, delete this clone. So I'm going to add that. If touching edge, and I can change it here with this little arrow. If touching edge, then delete this clone. Control, delete this clone. All right, so I'll put that under the move, and let's see if it works. All right, so I've got the burst of the radar, and I've got 20 balls going out. Each of them is different by 9 degrees, and when they hit the edge, they delete. Now, the thing, of course, I need them all to do is to bounce, flips, and come back, but that'll be for the next video.